When I was little, if something bad happened to me, like I skinned my knee or stubbed my toe, or maybe a friend was mean to me, I would run to my mother and she would say the strangest thing. She'd say, "Oh, honey, worse things happen at sea." I didn't find this particularly helpful, and it gave me quite a fear of all things nautical. But I've since learned that it's an old Victorian expression, because back in those days, many terrible things did happen at sea, from shipwrecks to storms to pirates. Worse things happen at sea. And I am still feeling seasick today, because over the weekend I saw Christopher Nolan's new film version of The Odyssey. And let me tell you, in this film, drawn from Homer's epic, many truly terrible things happen at sea. Leaving the coast of Asia Minor after the sack of Troy, Odysseus has 3 ships. In Homer's epic, it's 12, and he and his men encounter a series of ghastly dangers on land. Time and again, we see them running for the ship, trying to save their lives. And first, the Cyclops chases them, flinging men left and right. And then, this isn't a spoiler alert, right? It's a 3,000-year-old poem. And next, the steel-armored Laestrygonians shred 2 of Odysseus's ships and kill most of his men. And the remaining ship sails between the famous Scylla and Charybdis. And one man is lured to his death by the siren song, and others are snatched up and carried away by the tentacles of the monster. In the Odyssey, though, as bad as those things are, worst of all are the storms, and storms abound. Hence my lingering sea sickness. Time and again, the ship creaks and splinters, sails tear, masts crack in half, and waves swamp the deck, washing sailors away. And on Odysseus' last ship, we see this dwindling crew of men, and they have experienced brutal divine prophecies, angry gods, and most of all, their own awful choices. Whew. Terrible storms, stirred up by angry Zeus and Poseidon, ultimately drown all the men except for Odysseus. And after seeing this film, I really felt pummeled by all of that suffering at sea. People in Jesus' time lived in a world steeped in these dangerous stories, much like the Odyssey, which was written 1,000 years before Jesus. Pre-science, myth was science. It represented people's determined attempts to study and try to understand the world and make sense of it. And through these mythical stories, the lore of ancient religions, humans tried their best to get a handle on the new places and people and natural phenomena in their lives. And the way that they felt was towns and villages and farms, the safe known world, and the mountains and the desert, and most of all the sea, that was danger and chaos. So everyone knew in those days, or thought they knew, that spirits lived in the mountains. Sea monsters lurked beneath the waves. Even in the Bible, there's a sea monster called the Leviathan mentioned. And people believed that spirits stirred up storms and floods and disasters to toy with humans or teach them a lesson. And so, a story like the one that you heard Father Kim read this morning about a brutal storm at sea, every ancient listener would have recognized this as their worst nightmare. And they would hear, divine forces are at work to try to teach or destroy Jesus' friends. I'm wondering if it's for you the way it is for me, that 2026 has felt like a storm at sea. Dangerous and uncertain. And I think that's why the Odyssey is having such a huge cultural resonance right now. Together, it's like we're clutching on to the sides of a wooden ship, and our country is suddenly an unrecognizable sea, and a storm rages beneath our feet, tossing our boat high and low and side to side. And beneath the waves, Instead of a slithering sea monster, it's a world that seems to grow more violent and more divided by the minute. And in our boat, we can feel afraid. And that's exactly how we find Peter and the other disciples in today's gospel. Out in a boat, in a storm-tossed sea, scared out of their wits. Jesus has sent them out into the Sea of Galilee on a mission to go to other villages along the shore to feed and heal and teach and serve. And he's shown them how. And now it's their turn to try. He'll join them later. And in the meantime, they are trying their best to be brave and to survive. You could say that Jesus has sent them on a test. And as our story goes today, amidst a terrifying storm at sea, which is scary enough, suddenly Peter and his friends see Jesus walking toward them on the surface of the water, and now they're more scared than ever. One of them cries out, "It's a ghost!" And they're terrified, a storm and a ghost. And in the next moment, Peter shows courage. Because even in the midst of this huge storm and this ghost sighting, he finds the courage to ask a question. Jesus is testing his disciples. Peter is testing Jesus. Because he says, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." And Jesus, without missing a beat, says, "Come." And incredibly, in this story, Peter starts walking on the water and comes toward Jesus. This is trust. This is faith. Then a strong wind blows up, and Peter's faith falters. Of course it does. Our faith, our trust falter all the time. We're filled with faith and trust in God one minute, and then undone by worry and doubt the next. That's being human. Peter starts to sink, and some people hear Jesus' tone in this moment as harsh. "You of little faith," or in the old translation, "O ye of little faith, why do you doubt?" But I think about it differently. As the story goes, Peter has enough faith to have just walked on the water, a major feat, an incomparable miracle. Sure, he doesn't have the faith to sustain it, but he has faith. And I hear Jesus saying to him, "Why doubt me? Look what you did. Look what you did." Of course, Peter's faith is small, but he's brave too, and trusting enough to walk on water. In this story today, Jesus does not quiet the storm. There's another story about him when there's a storm on the Sea of Galilee, rebuking the waves and making them still. But in this story, he lets them crash and surge. And I think it's because storms in life are real. All the time, we face them. And what Jesus does in this story is he helps Peter gain the strength in the storm. He gives Peter the opportunity to walk out in courage and faith. And when he falters, when he loses his confidence and slips beneath the waves, Jesus pulls him to safety. The Japanese novelist Haruki Murakami writes, "When you come out of a storm, you won't be the same person who walked in." And I think every one of us in this room knows that that's true. We're changed. Moving through storms, enduring storms, it changes us, tumbling us like stones into new shapes. And in the Odyssey, the storm just destroys, with only Odysseus surviving. And he is a chastened and changed man. But what about our storms now? The personal ones, the global ones, our time of fear. Right now, we sail on dangerous seas, dreaming of dry land, but unable to glimpse the shore. It's a very biblical place to be. And my ask for you today is to try in the midst of this storm, these storms, as much as you can to trust in Jesus, remembering that he's with us to the end of the age, to the edge of the world, as we know it, and far, far beyond that. And when you forget, when you start to slip beneath the waves, because you will, we do, slip beneath the waves, remember the beautiful words from Paul's letter to the Romans that you heard Marcia read this morning. The word is near you, on your lips and in your heart, and you will be saved. Amen.